Dark Souls 2 is a bad game and you shouldn't play it. That is a statement I was first told when I got into FromSoft games from random Dark Souls fans on the internet, and like the mindless sheep that I am, I listened. I would go on to play Dark Souls 1, Dark Souls 3, Sekiro, and Elden Ring, but something never sat right with me. Why was I told to avoid Dark Souls 2 so much? Why did these random people online care so much that I didn't play it? What was really so bad about Dark Souls 2? So to find out, I downloaded Dark Souls 2, I streamed it over a week, and to be honest, what I found surprised me. Before I really jump into things, something you should know about me: if there is a character customization that's in depth, I'm gonna make something look terrible. For example, this is what we made for Dark Souls 2. His name was Luke Smacks. It's probably the best joke I've ever come up with, but he's fucking amazing. I don't want to bore you too much with the details, so I'll make the Dark Souls 2 development summary very quick. Dark Souls 1 and its predecessor Demon Souls was directed by Hidetaka Miyazaki, and then Dark Souls 2 was developed by Yui Tanimura and Tomohiro Shibuya. I hope I'm saying that right. I had to check my notes because I've recorded this way too many times. Miyazaki served as a hands-off supervisor during Dark Souls 2 development, as he was directing Bloodborne at that time. The joint direction style really wasn't working, with early versions of the game being completely broken, unplayable, and just unbalanced. At this point, people didn't think the game was going to be able to be finished by players at all. From Software initiated a restructure, with Tanimura then taking the lead as the creative director for that project. No more joint direction style. Now, with Tanimura being the sole director of the project, he had a lot of pressure on himself. He was tasked with fixing the unplayable mess and to completely turn the development around. The pressure really was on for him, as the success of the series could have landed on the success of Dark Souls 2. The Dark Souls series has some of the most beautifully designed locations out of any game series. And to be honest, personally, I die on that hill. You can debate me in the comments if you want. Just remember, I am right. Like, we got Anor Londo from Dark Souls 1, or we've got Irithyll of the Boreal Valley from Dark Souls 3. And to be honest, Dark Souls 2 is no different in that aspect. I know some areas in the Souls series look like shit. We know this. Dark Souls 2 has its areas that look fucking awful, but all of them do. But Dark Souls 2 also matches that theme of having these incredibly designed areas. For example, let's look at Majula from Dark Souls 2. And if you're not familiar with the Dark Souls 2, Majula is like your home hub. It's like the Firelink shrine from Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 3. But this place is so beautifully designed. It perfectly encapsulates this dreamlike setting. Every time I returned to Majula, it almost did not feel real, because it completely contradicts all of the chaos that's going on in the game. It also has one of the most beautifully composed OSTs I have heard in a long time. And to be honest, that only just added to the dreamlike atmosphere of this location. If Majula was on Airbnb, I'd be staying there every weekend, giving it 5 stars, and I'd have to be kicked out by the host because I just would not ever leave. Dark Souls 2 also added a lot of interactivity with the environment, and to be honest, many of them I didn't even discover on my first playthrough because I'm dumb and I completely missed some of them. But there's a wall by the bonfire in the Forest of the Fallen Giants that can be completely destroyed, revealing a shortcut. I didn't realise this. How many times have I run around this fucking... In the same area, there's a room with 4 ballistas in it. If you go below, there's a locked door. My chat told me that if you just hit the door, it's like you're knocking on it and they open the door for you. It's just genius, guys. Come on. Agree with me. And at Lost Bastille, if you push this barrel down the stairs, it will destroy the wall and reveal the blacksmith. This game is just genius, guys. Come on, we all need to be on the same page. These are just a few examples. There's so many of these packed throughout the game. It just made it so much more interesting to me, and I think it was a big step up from Dark Souls 1. There was just this whole new layer of interactivity with the environment, and I really enjoyed it. It made things so much more interesting for me as a first-time player for Dark Souls 2. Dark Souls 2's gameplay differs a lot to Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 3. I spent so much time in Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 3 blindly just running through areas, and whenever I applied this in Dark Souls 2, it almost never worked out for me. I was promptly told by my Twitch chat that this playstyle just doesn't work in Dark Souls 2. For each area I came across, I needed to be very careful when I approached it, which I really liked because that also encouraged me to carefully explore all these areas. And to be honest, this felt like such a breath of fresh air for me, as just running through these areas, believe it or not, got very stale very fast. Now I think it's time we talk about the adaptability stat.
Don't do it to me. I beg you. No.
I'll be honest, I did first try Dark Souls 2 many years ago, but I wasn't aware of this stat, and this stat makes things a lot easier. You see, the Dark Souls series introduced this thing called iframes, or invincibility frames. It is a time in which you are immune to damage, like during your rolls, meaning the higher amount of iframes you have, the longer you are immune to damage. So for example, if you are under a heavy load and you roll slowly, you have less iframes to when you have a low to medium equipped load and your rolls are a bit faster, meaning you have more iframes. You're probably saying, Ben, you fucking idiot, why are you talking about this? Why is this important in Dark Souls 2? Well, I shall tell you now. That is because in Dark Souls 2, one of the stats you can level up improves your iframes, which is something I didn't even know until I started streaming Dark Souls 2, and some random guy just joined my chat and told me, you're going to need to level up adaptability. You're not going to be able to play otherwise. This is behind a stat called adaptability. When you level this up, it increases your agility, which also increases your Estus Flask speed. I think when you level up to like 25 adaptability, you get 99 agility, which is plenty. You really don't need to level it up beyond that point. But what I noticed is that the higher I got that stat, the higher I got to 99 agility, the easier the boss fights got. Now, I'll be honest, this stat is not for everyone, with some players completely disagreeing that it should be in the game, and completely disagreeing that they should have to spend their souls and level up a stat just to get better iframes. And for me personally, when I say this, it might shock you, but for me, personally, I really like the stat. It really added this like RPG like idea in my head, and I really liked that idea. But for example, it's the same with strength weapons. You will need a certain strength stat requirement to use these weapons. If you don't have a high enough strength stat, then you can't use the weapon. Why not apply that to agility? Why should your dodges be automatically good if you haven't put any points into it? When you die in Dark Souls 2, your health is capped. This cap goes up to a cap of 50% of your health bar. When you use this human effigy, it removes that effect, allowing you to heal back to 100% of your health bar. Some players don't mind this system. Some players, yet again, completely disagree with this system being in the game. So if you're unfamiliar with this system, I will go over some pros and some cons of this system. The human effigies can be used as a way to control multiplayer. When you use one of these human effigies or burn it in a bonfire, it allows other players to join your games and opens you up to invasions. So not using one of these can block invasions from other players if you're at a crucial part in the game. I didn't actually mind this mechanic too much. Yet again, it just changed how I approached every location. And if I didn't have any human effigies left, I would be risking having my health capped up to 50% until I could find more. And yet again, that meant that there were consequences for how I was playing. Like I said, if I just rushed through areas and I kept dying, I'm going to make it harder for myself. Defeating bosses in Dark Souls 2 will automatically reverse hollowing. So even if you don't have human effigies and you do manage to defeat a boss, it will reverse the hollowing, allowing you to heal to 100% of your health bar. So one of the cons as well for Dark Souls 2 is there can be this sort of snowball effect. Dying over and over again in Dark Souls games can be extremely frustrating. Along with capping your health, it makes it a lot harder. This significantly increases the difficulty early on, as human effigies are not common in the early stages of the game, causing players to refuse to use them and even going through on areas just on 50% HP. Humanity in Dark Souls 1 would also heal the player, but in Dark Souls 2 the human effigies would not heal you, meaning players would have to use them to remove the cap and then whatever healing they had to get to 100% HP. It's a bit of a tedious system. I can see why people don't like it. In boss fights, using that plus whatever healing you have, that's a lot of time whilst you're in a boss fight. Personally, I didn't mind the system too much. I often had human effigies kind of stacked away and kind of sticking to only using them when was absolutely crucial. This was often during complicated areas that had a lot of enemies and I could really use with 100% of my health bar. I can see why players don't like it, and if you don't like that system, then it's absolutely fine. It's very different to the system we have in other Dark Souls, and it's probably why it wasn't implemented in the future. It is very different to the other Soul games, and I think they just wanted to try a new system and just add a layer of difficulty, but I think it's probably for the best that we didn't see this system come back. If you've played Dark Souls 2 and you didn't like it, what I'm gonna say next might just shock you. But if you didn't like Dark Souls 2, then that's completely okay. The game attempted many things that were different to the previous game, and it took a different direction in the series. But personally, I just think Dark Souls 2 needs more credit. When we look at what Dark Souls is about, it's about the odds being stacked against you, being the underdog and coming out on top, which really just reminds me of the development of Dark Souls 2. Even when the game was completely unplayable, things looked bleak, they still pulled through and the game released. Even if you don't like the game, I think it absolutely deserves its spot in the franchise, and we shouldn't push it off to the side, especially from a company like From Software, who have consistently brought us some of the best games of all time. I really appreciate if you took the time to listen to me ramble about Dark Souls 2 for a bit. If you liked the game, didn't like the game, put what you liked or didn't like in the comments. I want to see everyone's opinion about it. And you know, if you don't like it, that's okay. If you do like it, it's okay. We don't have to like every type of media that is in our faces. And finally, I do stream on Twitch, usually every day about between 7 and 8 PM. If you want to come by, I'd really appreciate it. I kind of stream whatever game that interests me. At the moment, it's Dead Rising, and I want to do a video of what the fuck happened to that series. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.